Hey. The government's nature-positive laws will be back on the agenda when Parliament returns for the first sitting fortnight of the year on Tuesday. Opposition Leader Peter Dutton has dubbed the legislation a wet blanket for Western Australia's mining sector and a disaster for the wider Australian economy. Joining me now is Deputy Nationals Leader Perrin Davey. So these laws, we thought we had a deal with Greens and Labor. Will you be seeking to put up amendments or just voting no?
I'll look at this stage without seeing any more detail than what you've seen, than seeing it reappear suddenly on the Senate list for a decision, for a vote. I think we'll be voting no. This is something that the Prime Minister himself pulled off the list last year. The Prime Minister who went to Western Australia, who spoke to the miners, who spoke to the Western Australian Premier and gave them his word and had this nature-positive bill taken off the proposed list, and now it's suddenly back on the list. We haven't had any update that I'm aware of from the Environment Minister, so our position hasn't changed. The only person whose position has changed is the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister needs to come clean and tell Western Australia what is going on.
Well, we'll see some details perhaps next week. Of course, everyone back here in the building on Tuesday. Anti-Semitism has been a huge talking point, obviously. Does Peter Dutton need to be cautious here about being seen to try to turn this into a political issue?
Well, look, I mean, everyone needs to be slightly cautious, but anti-Semitism is real. It has been real for a long time, but in the last 15 months, since October 7, we have been calling for leadership on this issue. The Jewish community has been calling for leadership on this issue. 2 days after the dreadful October 7 terrorist attacks in Israel, we saw protesters on the steps of the Opera House chanting anti-Jewish slogans. Now, I know there's conjecture about the exact wording of those chants, but what did we see from our Prime Minister of the day? Not much. And we have been calling for someone to take a very strong stand against anti-Semitism, against racism, against bigotry. This is what we as a nation need to see, and this escalation is quite terrifying, particularly for our Jewish communities in both Melbourne and Sydney. And Jewish people are quite rightly very concerned, and they want to see action being taken, strong action being taken, and I do commend New South Wales Police for the arrests they've made against people who have done anti-Semitic actions in the recent past. But this should have been something that was being dealt with from October 2023.
We did see that the opposition leader today query why Anthony Albanese wasn't told about this until January 29. Now, that's a fair enough question to ask, but it wouldn't be the Prime Minister's fault, would it? Police authorities tell him things or they don't. Isn't it a question around the authorities rather than something wrong the Prime Minister's done?
Well, it is a matter for the police, and I know the New South Wales Premier has said that he was briefed the day after they found the caravan by New South Wales Police. I guess the question needs to be asked, when were the AFP brought in, and when did the AFP then decide that they needed to brief the Prime Minister's office? When was the National Security Cabinet briefed on this very important issue? They are legitimate questions, noting as well, though, that the New South Wales Police Commissioner and the Minister have said that they are disappointed that it leaked to the press, and I can understand their concerns. I do believe the public have a right to know when there are issues such as potential terror issues that they need to be aware of, but it is a fine line to balance operational issues and keeping the public informed and safe.
We've got the Reserve Bank making a decision on rates later on this month. Of course, they switched a little while ago from the first Tuesday of the month. That was what Matt Thistlethwaite was still saying on the program earlier. Let's have a listen to Labor MP. Is the economy ready in terms of inflation for a rate cut now?
I think that's going to be the dominant issue next week. All eyes are going to be on the Reserve Bank on Tuesday, and we've got inflation back to the RBA's target band. Particularly mortgage holders are going to be looking with interest on Tuesday to see if the Reserve Bank does cut rates. It's back within the target band. Plenty of mortgage holders, particularly people in my community, will be hanging out for Tuesday to see if there's some relief coming.
Yeah, so it did switch there. It won't be next week. Mortgage holders will have to wait a little bit longer. Is this your worst nightmare, though, Perrin Davey? A rate cut, maybe two before the election? That would put a bit of wind in the sails in the government, wouldn't it?
Oh, look, you know, I'm a mortgage holder too. So a rate cut would be welcome right across the board. But what we need to look at is, while the overall inflation rate has fallen below the target band, the actual mean inflation rate, the trimmed inflation rate, has not. It's still sitting at 3.2%. Who knows what the RBA will do? I will be watching what they do with interest. But will an interest rate cut put wind in the sails for the Labor government? I think the Prime Minister will try and claim credit for it, but it won't be the Prime Minister's credit. It won't be the Treasurer's credit, because what they have done, this Labor government has kept inflation higher longer. They have ignored the RBA's independent warnings about government spending, keeping inflation high, making it homegrown inflation, and so this government cannot claim any credit if the interest rates are cut.
Okay. Just before we go, Peter Dutton made an announcement. He wouldn't be talking in front of the Aboriginal flag if he becomes Prime Minister. He wants to revert just to the Australian flag. You do have the Aboriginal flag behind you alongside the Australian flag. Do you consider it uniting, unifying rather than divisive, as Peter Dutton called it?
Well, and I also have the New South Wales flag because I am a proud New South Welshman. So I have these flags. But when I talk about the national flag is the Australian national flag. The blue ensign, that is our national flag. That is the one flag that represents all Australians right across the nation. And so I stand before that flag proudly, first and foremost, representing all Australians.
Okay. Perrin Davey, we'll leave it there. Talk soon. Thank you.
Thank you.